These artifacts aren't myths, they're real, and they may prove we're not the first advanced civilization on Earth. Right in the middle of a busy courtyard near the Qutub Minar in Delhi stands something that looks ordinary. Just a tall, dark iron pillar. But the closer you look, the stranger it gets. This thing has been standing there for over 1,600 years, fully exposed to rain, heat, and pollution, and yet it hasn't rusted. Not in any way you'd expect from iron. No crumbling, no flaking, no rot. Scientists have poked and scanned it for decades, and the answer they give is they don't know exactly how it's held up so perfectly. The official explanation is a mix of ancient forging techniques and high phosphorus content in the metal. But here's where it gets really odd. No other iron artifact from that time or place was made the same way. Not even close. It's like whoever made it had access to knowledge of chemistry and metallurgy that disappeared right after they were done. Some researchers think it was forged using a process that prevents the formation of iron oxide. That sounds like standard science until you realize that kind of control over metallurgy wasn't supposed to exist in 400 AD, or earlier depending on which dating method you trust. Now step back a bit. What if this pillar wasn't just a marker or a tribute? Some believe it could have been part of a much larger energy-related system. That might sound like a sci-fi plot, but look at it. Perfectly straight, perfectly balanced, and seemingly immune to decay. The idea that it could have been a conductor, a resonance rod, or even some sort of magnetic stabilizer pops up in more than one fringe theory. And while mainstream archaeologists dismiss those ideas, they also admit that the pillar shouldn't be in this condition today. So something doesn't add up. Even more curious, some local legends say the pillar was once part of a different city altogether, far older than Delhi. A city with knowledge that was given to them by the gods and then lost in floods. Think of Atlantis, but in South Asia. Now that story doesn't sound so far-fetched when you're standing next to a 7-ton iron monolith that laughs in the face of corrosion. In the misty hills of West Java, Indonesia, there's a site that was once thought to be nothing more than a pile of ancient rocks. Locals treated it like a sacred place. Archaeologists gave it a quick glance and moved on. But then came the scans. Deep penetrating radar revealed something that shattered the textbook timeline. Massive underground chambers, geometric layers of stone, and a complex structure buried under thousands of years of volcanic soil. And here's the kicker, they may be up to 28,000 years old. We're not talking about a minor temple. We're talking about a multi-level pyramid with organized platforms, walls, and tunnels. It's like finding a buried skyscraper in a jungle. If the carbon dating results hold up, Mount Padang would be the oldest known megalithic structure on the planet. That's twice as old as the Egyptian pyramids. Twice. The layout suggests planning, knowledge of seismic resistance, and a clear design. And yet mainstream history keeps it on the fringe. Why? Because it means our ancestors weren't just hunters with sticks. They were builders, engineers, and thinkers. Some researchers even say the base wasn't just man-made. It was intentionally aligned with astronomical patterns, which would mean whoever built it also tracked the sky with precision. It's been called Indonesia's Atlantis. And while that might sound dramatic, the site keeps revealing secrets no one expected. The deeper they dig, the older it gets. And the world isn't quite ready to accept what that means. In Lebanon's ancient city of Baalbek, you'll find stones so massive they make modern construction equipment look like toys. These aren't random boulders. They're carved, transported, and perfectly placed blocks weighing up to 800 tons each. The three most famous ones form the Trilithon, monumental stones locked together like puzzle pieces in the foundation of the Temple of Jupiter. Now here's the strange part. No one really knows how they got there. Not the Romans, who built on top of them. Not the civilizations before them, who left no clear record of how they managed to move or stack something so insanely heavy. The nearest quarry is half a mile away, uphill. Some of these stones weigh more than a fully loaded Boeing 747. The precision is next level. The gaps between the stones are so tight you can't slide a piece of paper between them. No mortar, no visible tool marks, just perfect alignment. And the technology to move that kind of mass safely doesn't even exist in most parts of the world today. There are theories, of course, ancient levitation techniques, sound frequency lifting, anti-gravity tech passed down from a forgotten civilization. Sounds wild until you realize that what we're seeing in Baalbek literally shouldn't be possible unless someone a very long time ago knew something we don't. This isn't mythology. These stones are real, they're sitting in the sun right now, out in the open, just daring someone to explain them. Inside a small chapel in Santa Fe, New Mexico, stands a staircase that should not exist. It's elegant, spiraling, made entirely of wood, and it has no visible support. No central column, no nails, no glue, yet it stands. For over a century now, it's held the weight of curious visitors and skeptics alike without so much as a creak. The story goes that the Sisters of Lorettto prayed for a way to access their choir loft, which was too high for a normal staircase. Days later, a mysterious carpenter appeared with nothing but basic hand tools. He built the staircase in silence using wooden pegs and steam-bent wood. Then he vanished without pay or even a thank you. No one ever found out who he was. The structure makes 2 full 360-degree turns with no central support beam, something that defies architectural logic. Engineers have studied it and walked away, shaking their heads. Even the type of wood used doesn't grow anywhere nearby. Some call it a miracle. Others think it's a relic of forgotten building techniques. A few even whisper that the carpenter wasn't human at all. Pop culture fans sometimes compare it to scenes from the Da Vinci Code or claim it's got the same eerie energy as Stranger Things. Whatever you believe, the Lorettto Staircase remains one of the most baffling constructions in the Western Hemisphere. And it wasn't built in some ancient empire, it's right here in the United States. Out in the blazing emptiness of Saudi Arabia's Tema oasis stands a massive sandstone boulder sliced clean down the middle, as if by a giant laser. Known as the AlNusla Split rock, this formation has stunned visitors for years. The cut is razor straight, runs edge to edge, and separates the two halves so perfectly that it's almost unsettling. And here's what really raises eyebrows. There's no sign of tool marks, no chipping, no gradual erosion. Just a clean, surgical division. Geologists suggest natural forces like faulting and erosion, but the split is too straight, too precise to fit comfortably within that explanation. Plus, the two sides haven't shifted or sunk. They still stand upright, balanced perfectly on thin stone pedestals. Some researchers believe the cut aligns with magnetic anomalies underground, hinting that some kind of lost tech or unknown energy field might be involved. And don't overlook the ancient petroglyphs carved into the rock. They show animals and symbols that date back thousands of years, suggesting this site has been important for a very long time. Was it a ceremonial marker? An ancient beacon? A failed attempt at something much larger? Whatever it is, the AlNusla Split looks less like nature's handiwork, and more like the result of advanced engineering. Or maybe even something extraterrestrial. Between the southern tip of India and the island of Sri Lanka lies a strange formation stretching nearly 30 miles across the sea. Known in Hindu legend as Ramas Bridge, or in modern maps, Adam's Bridge, it appears as a string of limestone shoals just under the surface of the water. From above, it looks like an ancient causeway connecting the two land masses. What's mind-blowing is that satellite imagery and geological surveys show this wasn't always submerged. In fact, it may have been walkable as recently as a few thousand years ago. Some studies even suggest it was constructed intentionally, stones laid in formation with sand and coral filling the gaps. According to the ancient Indian epic Ramayana, this is exactly how the bridge was built. By an army of highly intelligent beings led by Rama, a divine figure, to rescue his wife from the demon king Ravana. Mainstream science calls it a natural formation. But if it's natural, why does it follow a perfectly curved line between two specific points of land? Why does it appear reinforced in places like the remnants of collapsed roadwork? Some marine geologists admit the structure is geologically unusual. It's one of those cases where ancient mythology and satellite data are saying the same thing, but no one wants to say it out loud. Maybe this was a real engineered structure. One left behind by a civilization smart enough to map out the seafloor thousands of years ago. Just outside of Rockwall, Texas, a construction crew digging a well in the 1850s struck something that wasn't supposed to be there. Giant stones arranged in what looked like a wall, buried deep beneath the earth. Over the years, more of this Texas wall was uncovered. Rows of massive blocks interlocked in geometric patterns, some with what appear to be mortar seams or etchings. Locals thought it was man-made. Scientists dismissed it as natural sedimentary rock formations. And the debate hasn't stopped since. Some segments stretch for hundreds of feet. The stones show signs of shaping, flat faces, 90-degree edges, and fitted corners. Even more bizarre, parts of the wall seem to form archways and what could be entrances or collapsed chambers. If this is nature's doing, then nature was very deliberate. Geologists still argue it's just a natural dike, a kind of rock intrusion. But independent researchers who've examined the site claim it's too organized, too regular. And why is it buried so deep? Who built it, if anyone? And what was it for? The Texas Wall isn't famous like the pyramids, but maybe it should be. Because if it's artificial, that means North America had a civilization capable of megalithic engineering long before any we officially recognize. One that left behind a fortress, or maybe a city, now lost beneath the soil of suburban Texas. In a quiet village in Romania, archaeologists digging through Neolithic ruins made a discovery that threw the timeline of human history into chaos. 3 small clay tablets covered in strange symbols were pulled from a site known as Tartaria. They were simple, palm-sized artifacts, yet their markings looked shockingly advanced. At first glance, you might mistake them for something Sumerian, but here's the twist. These tablets are older. Radiocarbon dating placed them around 5300 BC, nearly 1,000 years before the earliest known examples of writing in Mesopotamia. That's not just odd. That's impossible by traditional history standards. How could an advanced system of symbols, potentially a form of proto-writing, show up in a rural part of Europe, ahead of the so-called cradle of civilization? Some say the symbols are decorative or magical. Others think they represent a forgotten system of record-keeping. But there's a deeper theory, one that hints at a buried culture in prehistoric Europe, one with knowledge of astronomy, math, and maybe even metallurgy. The tablets were found near other advanced items, a copper bracelet, stone tools, and charred bones, possibly from a ritual. It feels like something bigger was going on here, something that never made it into the official narrative. Mainstream academia hesitates to call it writing, but when you look at the shapes, grids, pictographs, organized sequences, it's hard to believe it's random. Could the Tartaria Tablets be the final trace of a civilization erased by time and flood with only these clay fragments left behind as a clue? It's as if someone was trying to send a message. The question is, were they the first to write, or the last to remember? Across various sites in Central and South America, mysterious carvings resembling humanoid beings with large eyes, commonly associated with the gray alien archetype, have been found etched into ancient stone. One such stone head, with triangular symbols and radiating lines, appears almost cartoonishly extraterrestrial, yet it's undeniably old. Alongside these are fossilized giant footprints embedded in rock layers, thought to be millions of years old. In one such case, a massive humanoid footprint dwarfs a modern hand by comparison, raising uncomfortable questions. Are these remnants of ancient beings? Giants? Or something entirely different? While mainstream science often dismisses these as misinterpretations or hoaxes, their photographic and physical existence remains difficult to ignore. In a museum in Iraq once sat a strange artifact that looked nothing like the jewelry, tools, or pottery from its time. It was a clay jar sealed with asphalt, and inside was a copper cylinder with an iron rod. Simple enough, until someone tried filling it with grape juice and got a tiny jolt of electricity. That's when things got weird, because this so-called Baghdad Battery dates back over 2,000 years to the Parthian period, long before anyone was supposed to know how to generate electricity. Officially, it's considered a mystery. Some say it was used for electroplating, like applying a thin layer of gold or silver onto metal. Others believe it might have been a part of religious rituals, or maybe something much more advanced. But here's where the theories get charged. If this was just one example of ancient electricity, how many others have we missed? Were there once labs or energy systems scattered across the ancient world? And why haven't we found more? The artifact itself was dismissed by many until replicas started working. With lemon juice or vinegar inside, these simple devices really can produce a current. Not enough to power a city, but enough to spark new questions. If they knew how to make a battery, what else did they know? Some even suggest it's evidence that ancient Mesopotamia had access to lost scientific knowledge, passed down from an earlier, more advanced civilization, one we barely remember. Before Sumer, before Babylon, there was a mysterious culture in Mesopotamia called the Ubeoid. They left behind advanced pottery, irrigation systems, and something even more unsettling, a series of strange figurines with humanoid bodies and reptilian heads. These clay statues aren't crude, they're detailed. Some wear helmets, others hold infants. A few even seem to be sitting on thrones. But all of them share one thing: they look like lizards. Not stylized animals, but upright, intelligent beings with long eyes, flat snouts, and scaled skin. And they date back to 5000 BC, before writing, before cities, before anything we consider civilization. Mainstream archaeology says they're symbolic or mythological, but symbolic of what exactly? The Ubeoid culture wasn't known for wild religious imagery. They were practical. So why these beings? Some researchers believe they represent deities. Others go further, connecting them to legends of the Anunnaki or even extraterrestrial visitors. It sounds outrageous until you realize these figures weren't just found in one place. They showed up across multiple sites in the same style with the same reptilian features. Were these just artistic creations? Or were they based on something or someone the Ubeoid actually encountered? Whatever the truth is, these figurines are quietly stored in museums today, rarely discussed, yet staring straight back through time with cold, ancient eyes. Discovered in a tomb in Sakara in 1898, this wooden figure looked like a bird at first glance. But something about it was off. The wings were flat and straight, not curved like a real bird's. The tail was vertical, more like a modern airplane's rudder, and it had no feet. It looked less like a toy and more like a glider. Experts dated it to around 200 BC, but no one could explain why it was made that way. Some said it was a ceremonial object. Others claimed it was just a stylized hawk. But then aerodynamicists stepped in. Using wind tunnels and scale models, they discovered the Sakara Bird could glide, almost perfectly, if fitted with a small stabilizer. So was this the result of ancient engineers experimenting with flight? The Egyptians were masters of math, architecture, and astronomy. Is it really that impossible to think they might have studied the sky more deeply than we thought? There's even a theory that this was part of a larger, now-lost design. Perhaps a full-scale glider or an early attempt at manned flight. Sounds crazy? So did the idea of ancient air batteries and laser-straight stone cuts. The Sakara Bird isn't just a relic, it's a puzzle, and it quietly suggests that over 2,000 years ago, someone in Egypt may have looked up and wanted to go higher. Deep inside the Temple of Hathor in Dendera, Egypt, there's a stone relief that looks like it doesn't belong in the ancient world at all. On the wall, you'll see a strange object, a long, rounded shape with a thick, cable-like stem leading to what appears to be a power box. Inside that shape, a snake-like figure curling along the length of what many say looks like a giant light bulb. This carving has sparked decades of debate. Some say it's symbolic, representing aspects of Egyptian mythology. But others, especially those who've studied the technical side, believe it may show actual technology. The shape resembles a Crookes tube, an early electrical device used to study cathode rays in the 19th century. But this carving is over 2,000 years old. Even the way it's held, supported by figures standing underneath, with what looks like a power cable running to a box topped with a baboon-headed god, raises serious questions. Was this just artistic imagination, or were the Egyptians hinting at something they weren't supposed to have? There's no soot on the ceilings of the temple, no burn marks from torches. That fact alone has led some to believe they lit their temples using something else, something cleaner, something far more advanced. Skeptics say it's all coincidence, but when you look at that carving closely, it's hard to shake the feeling that someone, thousands of years ago, may have known how to harness electricity. Or maybe they were remembering it from an even older time. Hidden in the jungles and fields of Costa Rica, hundreds of massive stone spheres sit scattered like ancient marbles left behind by giants. They vary in size from just a few inches to over 7 feet in diameter and weigh up to 16 tons. And yet many are almost perfectly round, not roughly shaped, not kind of circular. Perfect. These spheres were crafted over 1,000 years ago by the pre-Columbian Dicas culture. But here's the kicker. No one knows why or how. The nearest source of the stone is miles away and they didn't have metal tools or wheels. So how did they carve them? How did they transport them? Some spheres were aligned in patterns, lines, triangles, spirals. Others were buried in clusters. And when the Spanish arrived, locals believed they held treasure, so many were destroyed. But the truth might have been far more valuable than gold. One theory suggests they were used to map the stars. Another claims they were markers for lost cities or energy lines, like the Nazca lines in Peru. There's even speculation that the spheres are leftovers from an ancient civilization that passed on its knowledge and vanished, leaving behind these perfect shapes as a kind of signal, or warning. They weren't just decorations, they were deliberate. And whoever made them understood geometry on a level that still stuns archaeologists today. On a clay prism now housed in Oxford's Ashmolean Museum is a list that reads like ancient royal propaganda, until you notice something strange. It's the Sumerian king list, and it records every ruler of Sumer, going back to the dawn of civilization. Some of them reigned for a few decades, others for tens of thousands of years. One king ruled for 2800 years, another for 36,000. These weren't mythical gods. They were listed right alongside rulers we do recognize from archaeology. So why would these reigns be recorded with such specific and impossibly long numbers? Mainstream historians chalk it up to symbolic writing. They say the numbers represent greatness, not literal years. But that doesn't explain why the list was carved in such a formal, organized way. It wasn't poetic, it was bureaucratic. There's also the question of the flood. The list clearly mentions a cataclysm. The flood swept over the land. After the flood had swept over, after which the reign lengths become more realistic. That division mirrors stories from other ancient texts, the Bible, the Epic of Gilgamesh, even Hindu scriptures. Some researchers believe the king list is a timeline left behind by a civilization that existed before recorded history. A forgotten world ruled by beings, humans or not, who possessed extraordinary longevity or power. Are these reigns exaggerated stories? Or are they remnants of an older truth, one we've buried deeper than any artifact? In 1974, near the town of Aayud in Romania, workers digging along a riverbank unearthed something strange. Among fossilized bones of extinct animals, they found a wedge-shaped metallic object. It was buried deep in sediment, dated by some to be at least 10,000 years old. But here's the strange part. The object was made of aluminum, an element that wasn't industrially produced until the 1800s. The shape? It looked like a component from a machine, even similar to parts used in aircraft landing gear. Experts debated whether it was a hoax, a misplaced modern object, or something far older. But tests confirmed the aluminum alloy wasn't modern, and its level of oxidation suggested extreme age. Was it part of a machine from a lost civilization, or something else entirely? It sits quietly in a museum now, often ignored, but for those who've seen it up close, the Aayud artifact feels less like a mistake, and more like a message. That's about it. Write in the comments what is the strangest thing you have eaten in your life. For more useful information, watch other videos.